Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek zodiac to the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Allison Dale, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to Cycles of Time podcast. I'm your host, Allison Dale, and this is the final episode of Season 1 of Cycles of Time. Quite a milestone. I am pretty pumped to know that I made it through this entire year and recorded every single week, weekly forecast, tapping into the energies of the different wheels of the year. It's been such a profoundly deep and personal process for me. And so thank you all for listening and being here. And I hope you've picked up some interesting tidbits along the way too. This episode of Cycles of Time is really special because I had the honor of speaking to my Pisces season guest, Jonathan Koe. Jonathan is a friend of mine who is an astrologer and an energy worker, a creative exorcist, a spirit healer, a talented musician, and just an overall inspiring human being who is really tapped into Pisces season energy. And so we'll get into that interview very shortly. It's a bit of a long one, so I don't have much of an intro here today. If you're looking for the forecast, I did do a double feature 2-week forecast last week. And so you can listen to that to carry you through this week. But in this week's interview, we talk about what it's like to be a Pisces sun, what it's like to live in that liminal space between winter and spring and have that influence life, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere. That's how it shows up. Jonathan grew up in Indonesia, so his Pisces season was a little bit different with the end of the rainy season at that time of year. So really interesting to think about these cycles of time from that more equatorial tropical perspective as well. And we also get into Jonathan's sun gate, which is gate 63, the gate of doubt, which evolves in the gene keys from doubt into truth. And then that is opposite my sun gate, which is gate 64, which evolves from confusion to illumination. And so Jonathan and I really had a good time talking about the polarity between the Virgo-Pisces axis, between gates 63 and 64, these kind of capstone gates to the I Ching, and also about the lunar eclipse that's coming up this week on the Virgo-Pisces axis. And so it's a really juicy conversation, and I look forward to sharing it with you here in a minute. Before I do, I just wanted to make a couple of announcements since we are here at the end of one cycle and the beginning of a new one. I am going to continue Cycles of Time. It's been such a deep and profound experience for me. So you can continue to find it as you normally have released every Monday and listen to the forecast for the week ahead. I'm probably going to keep doing video, but I'm not making any guarantees yet. But at least this first one here. And I also am doing an offering that was welcoming everybody into Cycles of Time in a community way. It's called Embody the Revolution, and it is basically an invitation to walk the wheel of the year in community. And the way we're doing that is I'm sending out basically, you join it by becoming a paid subscriber on Substack, and it's a really great deal. You're going to get a PDF, really detailed, beautiful, well-designed PDF that I'm very proud of, that's going to come out every month at the beginning of the zodiac season. So the first one will be coming out for Aries season on March 20th, and it'll be sent to your inbox so you can view it on your computer or print it out. And it's going to include information about the elemental qualities qualities of the season, some somatic exercises and breathing exercises for the season, some journaling prompts, and a lot of detailed information about the 6 human design gates of the season, as well as the astrological transits of the season. So it's a super jam-packed with information kind of workbook that you'll get. And then at the end of every zodiac season, we're going to do a community reflection session on Zoom. So a live session where we can gather and talk about how the wheel of the year and these different gates and energies are showing up for us personally. And in the middle of the season, during the full or new moon, I'm going to be hosting a breathwork session, a conscious connected breathwork session, which I'm calling Revolutionary Breath, because it's tapping into these cycles and these revolutions of the seasons. And it'll be a kind of intentional guided breathwork journey that lasts about an hour. And it'll give us a chance to really tap into the season's energies in our bodies. So really exciting stuff. I haven't ever done anything quite like this before, and I'm really excited to just welcome everybody into this process of embodying the energies of the wheel on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis. So I do hope you'll join me. I'll post the information about it in the show notes. And again, it's just becoming a paid subscriber on Substack is the best way to engage with the material. I think it's a really reasonable deal. I'm offering for $30 a month for all of that, and also a community chat either on WhatsApp or on Substack, where we can chat throughout the month about transits that are coming up. So it's a really, deeply engaging offering that I think will be a lot of fun. And so, I will post all the information about that. You can join on a month-to-month basis, where you can join for a month and then stop if you like, or you can pay for a year ahead, just do the whole year and make a commitment to yourself to walk the wheel of the year this year, from equinox to equinox. And that's at a discounted rate of $300 for the year. And then for a founding membership price of $400, you also get a one-on-one personalized reading of your choice, astrology, human design, or a custom cycles of time reading, or a breathwork session, one-on-one breathwork session. And so that's just a really nice way to support this work. That is it. Embody the revolution. Really excited about it. I'm also really excited about this conversation between Jonathan and I today. And so thank you all for being listeners over the course of this past year. And if you're new here, welcome. It's really nice to see you here. And I hope to continue to connect with you as the Wheel of the Year progresses. Have a beautiful, beautiful day and enjoy this conversation with Jonathan Koe. I'm sitting here with Jonathan Koe, and I'm so happy to have you here on Cycles of Time today. Thanks for joining me.
Of course. Thank you, Allison.
Yeah, Jonathan, I met you, I think we met in Sabrina Monarch's Evolutionary Astrology Intensive, I think back in 2019, 2020.
Approximately 15 lifetimes ago.
Right. So much has happened since then. But it was wonderful to be in that container with you. And I've just followed your work ever since and find that, everything that you're putting out there, your course offerings and your podcast, just so profound and so tapped into spirit and kind of just everything that I need in the world right now. So it's been beautiful to follow your evolution ever since. And recently I was chatting with Britton LaRue on her podcast, and we had noticed that she and I had opposite human design gates, the 63 and 64. And I mentioned doing a show kind of to talk about that end gates of the I Ching, the 63 and the 64. And she mentioned that you also share a birthday with her and gate 63. So we had a plan to do a 3-way conversation here today with Britton. So she's a little under the weather. So if you're listening out there, Britton, best wishes for feeling a lot better soon. But
Yeah, we miss
yeah,
you.
we miss you. Yeah, we wish you were here. But I didn't know when your birthday was. I guess I might have picked it up through our course together in the
Mm,
evolutionary intensive, but I hadn't remembered. I had a sense you were a
yeah,
Pisces, but
yeah.
didn't know that you were necessarily gate 63. And so I'm so excited to sit here today and just, yeah, talk to you a little bit about your birthday season and kind of what you're up to. And what I love to do on these cycles of time interviews is ask people kind of how they resonate with different aspects of their birthday season.
Mm,
I look at the wheel of the year from kind of a polycultural perspective as far as how a lot of different cultures throughout time and a lot of different human ancestors have looked at the wheel of the year. And
yeah.
so, Pisces is the zodiac wheel, and then we have gate 63 in the I Ching and human design wheel. And then we'll talk a little bit about like the Wuxing cycle, the 5-element Taoist cycle,
Hmm.
as well as the medicine wheel and the pagan wheel of the year. And just kind of what I love to do is just throw out kind of the elemental alchemy from those cycles and see kind of how that shows up in your life, if it does at all.
Yeah,
So, how's that
yeah.
sound?
Sounds great. I love the kind of the fractal approach that you're bringing to looking at time. You're reminding me, Allison, of how my Chinese astrology teacher recently said something about how time doesn't exist outside of us, that we are time itself. Like we are each these like fractals of time. And as someone who also kind of plays and swims in all these different modalities, I have over time found that looking at time or the quality of time through different lenses and fractals is so valuable because in some ways, and I'm sure we'll get into this when we talk about Gate 63, but in some ways, I think it lends a certain flexibility to essentially like the fiction the fictional lens that we've put on time, right?
Mm,
Because the reality is that time itself is beyond language, is beyond any of our conception. And also at the same time, different people tuned into the energetics of a specific time and have their impressions around it. And I think it's really helpful to kind of study those impressions and to deepen into that impression from the perspective of our own vessels and lived experiences.
yes, I love that so much. That's a beautiful way of putting it. Yeah, we are time, our bodies are time keepers, and, tapping into the stars or different things that are happening on the earth at various times of the year can ground us into our relationality with both the sky and the earth. But it is within our bodies that we are part of that and we are tracking
Yeah.
it. So I love that.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. Wonderful. Well, before we get any further, I wanted to read a short bio. I loved the bio that you have on your current website. And so I thought I would just read that just as it is because it was so perfect and succinct and just magical. So basically, Jonathan is a lunar thinker, a spirit healer, and a creative exorcist. Jonathan guides and inspires visionaries, artists, and seekers to rearrange reality without losing their shit. That is so good. Like, I love your website, all of the, calls to action, calls to flow. But like, I would love if you could maybe elaborate a little bit on this, on some of these word creative exorcism and
Yeah.
rearranging reality. I love that so much.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that reflection, Allison. And I think that was the first time somebody read that bio back to me. So I just had this really vibrant, sacred response to it. So thank you for giving me that experience. Um, yeah. Did you want me to talk about the creative exorcism part
I'm
or which part?
curious. I mean, just
Yeah.
how you came to, I'm sure we all, as we're, creative people, come up with lots of different ways to describe ourselves over time, and
Yeah.
it's a really challenging thing to do. And I just felt that this was so simple, but there's so much depth in each one of these
Mm,
lunar thinker, spirit healer, creative exorcist, and yeah, I mean, in your own words, I'd just love to hear kind of what you are bringing to the collective right now, and
yeah.
how you frame your work.
Mm, that's such a great question. I'm doing my best not to fall into the rabbit hole a la Alice here, because I can probably talk about this forever. But I would say I started to feel sometime around the end of last year that it was really important for me to take a step back from defining myself through the lens of phrases that people usually use, like astrologer or energy worker or artist, because when we are using these terms to describe what we do, we are inevitably stepping into a river of archetypes, right? We're stepping into the way that all these other people have done it, and as someone born with the sun in gate 63, I always find that inevitably I get a little bit confused about like where I end and where other people begin. So I started to get really disciplined and committed to using phrases that really, to me, describe succinctly like what I do. And so when I think about being a lunar thinker, my work with astrology, my work with human design, I really think of it as it is really about thinking, right? And thinking as a word itself or as a concept is often kind of has a weird connotation in the spiritual world. But the reality is, thinking is something that we all do. It's part of the human experience, right? And when we're looking at these systems that our ancestors have created to understand our relationship with the cosmos, we are really thinking. We are using our mental faculty, right? And I brought in the lunar piece there because in my work, looking at astrology, looking at human design, sitting across from clients and students, I noticed that this is not the kind of thinking that we're necessarily doing academically, right? Where this is the right answer, this is the textbook, but rather this is thinking that's happening in between bodies, right? In between our human bodies, in between our bodies and the celestial bodies, right? And then the second word I was using, spirit healer, my podcast wanted to be called it wanted to be named Healing the Spirit when I first created it. And to be honest with you, Allison, I did not like that name. I was like, this sounds like some woo person from California from the 60s. Like, I am cooler than that. But the name really stuck. And in doing the project, it really felt to me like the project itself, like the podcast Healing the Spirit, was teaching me what it meant to heal the spirit for me personally. Which recently I was contextualizing this in terms of this journey that I went through from self-doubt into self-disillusion, like the idea that the self itself is a fiction that we can hold lightly, right? And that we can continue to add to and we can continue to tweak. And in the middle of that process, my artistic background and my artistic practice continued to show itself as kind of this fascia network, right? It is the bridge between that state of self-doubt and self-disillusion. And in the middle, there is the artistic element of it all, like self-exploration, self expression, and also self-exorcism. Like I've been thinking about this idea of creative exorcism because oftentimes as an artist, my process is I touch in or I get visited by these really intense emotions and experiences. And then the work of an artist, at least from my lens, is to create something outside of my body that can hold that frequency, right? So if I'm creating a music album, or if I'm creating a website, or if I'm creating a podcast, creating an Instagram post, that energy gets to live outside of my body. And when that energy lives outside of my body, it frees up energy in my own physical body to be able to do whatever it is that it needs to do, right? Physical body healing, emotional transmutation, and that to me, in a nutshell, is the process of liberation, right? The process of liberation is recognizing that we are part of this greater web and we can rely. on our connection to the web, our connection to members of our community, connection to the human, the non-human, the more than human world, and also our connection with our creative work. That we're not doing this alone. We're never walking alone. And I think liberation is the process of remembering that.
Wow. Wow, I have chills. I just, so many things that you said just give me a tingly feeling. I mean, the fascial network of our creative expression and to hold us is in like a, yeah, hold us in that net of not holding it all inside. I mean,
Mm.
that's so beautiful. I consider myself an artist too, but I've always struggled with
Yeah.
that word of like labeling
Mm.
myself as such. And,
Mhm.
but that idea of, releasing some things outside of your body so that they can be a part of that larger conversation and hold you as well as others. That's super beautiful. I love that so
Mhm.
much. And fascia, I just am obsessed with fascia lately. Just this
Yeah,
such an unknown system of the body that
right.
is holds everything. But the, scientists who are looking at organ systems don't really know anything about it or didn't
Yeah.
recognize it for so long. And so to own that and to recognize the fascial network of our collective consciousness, through the arts is like very, very cool. I love that.
Mm.
And also, spirit, yeah, that word, the 60s woo kind of concept. I feel that in a certain way. I think there's the
Yeah.
words spirit and abundance, and there's certain
Mhm.
words that kind of can feel maybe a little spiritually bypassy or, yeah, not
Yeah.
cool or whatever. I've been thinking about that too. But you have Mercury in the gate of spirit
Yeah,
in
that's
human
right.
design, and
Hmm.
it's also known as the gate of abundance. And for me, that lately I've been thinking a lot about that gate because we have the precession of the equinoxes in 2027 is going to be going from 37, the gate of community or family, into gate 55, the gate of spirit and abundance for the next several hundred years. And so collectively, I think we're all making a shift into more of this understanding of what spiritual abundance is as opposed to material abundance. And
Yeah.
so the way that you spoke about it just really, yeah, lit up a lot for me. So thank you for that.
You're so
Beautiful.
welcome. Yeah, I'm curious to hear if you feel like sharing too. Um, what feels challenging about the phrase artist or the word artist for you?
Yeah. I think that, like you mentioned, the archetypical associations that what that entails, just having being being judged or being perceived as someone who would call themselves that has for a
Mm.
long time felt like, well, I'm many other things besides a painter. And as I started to expand the notion and the definition of what artist is being an artist is a way of life to
Mm.
me. It's a way of living. It's a way of seeing the world rather than necessarily the creations that you're making.
Yeah.
It started to become a lot more accessible for me to say, yeah, I'm an artist because I live life in a way of curiosity and inquiry and imagination. And
Mm.
that kind of helped to ground into it rather than thinking that I would have to then create something that looked a certain way, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a
Yeah,
lot of focus on like the portfolio as an artist. Like, okay, if you call yourself an artist, now prove it, right?
right.
And
Are you getting
um,
paid for the work? Yeah, that kind of thing,
correct.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, great. I'm curious to ask you about your birthday. You just celebrated a birthday.
Yeah.
And I just love to hear how people generally feel about their birthdays and how
Mm.
you celebrated this year and if you celebrated as a child growing up. What kind of associations do you have with your birthday itself?
Mm. Wow, that's such a great question, Allison. I don't think anybody has ever asked me that question before. Um, I would say the constant, when I look back on past birthdays, the constant that I'm picking up is change. How my birthday always feels really different from year to year. Like there's not a single pattern. I know some people like to celebrate their birthdays in a very specific way, but um, if there's something that I pick up on as like a thread, it's always that there is kind of this pressure around it. You know, I notice pressure around birthdays that aren't always, it's not always entirely mine. It kind of feels like it's coming from the collective as well sometimes, or even from people around you, being a little bit nervous. Like everyone's like, what do you want for a gift? And
Mm-hmm.
um, sometimes that pressure makes me not want the gift.
I feel you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and recently, this past birthday, I have been reflecting a lot on my relationship with my impulses and my desires, and as a generator, my sacral response. Um, and you probably have experienced this too, but kind of traversing within the human design realm, the sacral, uh, the sacral center gets this reputation as being like pretty loud. Like at least when I hear people talk about it, it's like the sacral response is always like or it's like or it's like
Mm-hmm.
silent, right? But in my experience, actually, as a generator who's lived all my life, with all this conditioning, actually hearing my sacral response is a pretty subtle experience. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I have to get really deep into myself, and I have to do a lot of clearing of all these additional layers that have, consciously or unconsciously been put on me in order for me to be able to hear that true response.
Mm.
So this is a really long-winded way of saying, on my birthday, I kept wanting to eat tiramisu, like a specific tiramisu. So um, we had been celebrating the weekend prior with my partner, and on my birthday, I decided to do it, and it
Mm.
felt great. And there's kind of
Mm.
the experience taught me something. This is something that I feel um, passionate about when it comes to human design in terms of experimenting with myself and in my own life, and being a guide to help other people do their own experiment, engage in their own experiment, is how we all need to find our own way into these experiments, right? But what I've learned time and time again from following the quieter sacral response is that it's often like when you satisfy that response or when you satisfy that desire, there's kind of a settledness to it. Like the noise kind of drains away, and then what you feel into is this groundedness,
Mm.
actually, for me at least. Like it
Mm.
it it lands as groundedness. I also have um gate 5 is the only one that's activated in my sacral, so maybe that's what it is too. Like there's kind of a mm, feeling to it. And yeah, we then went to the Met Museum here in New York City, and then we walked around Center Park. So
Beautiful.
it was a very chill birthday. But last birthday was not like this. It was extremely dramatic. So so I'd say yeah, like it changes year to year.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's lovely. That's funny. I had tiramisu last night myself.
Nice.
Maybe I was
It's in the
channeling
field.
your, yeah, something about it. Yeah. My mom brought it to a little family gathering and I hadn't had it in so long. It's delicious.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
feel, yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't have that sacral response because I'm a projector. And so
Mhm. I felt that you were a
I'm,
projector.
yeah, yeah. I'm curious about the sacral response. My daughter is a generator. And
Mm.
so after learning, yeah, getting into human design a bit, I started doing the game with her, the yes no game. And she loves it. She requests it. She's like, can we play the yes no game? And it's really just asking a series of questions like, are your eyes brown? Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Are you 5 years old? Mm-mm. Are you 6 years old? Mm-hmm. And then getting into like, do you want pizza for dinner? Mm-mm. Do you
Yeah.
want tiramisu? And I love this game, like just to kind of to be able to go through that because at an early age, I think for her it is honing that
Mm.
listening to that sacral. But it's something that's not really familiar for my decision making process because
Mm.
I tend to pick up other people's energies in that way. So I love that you're exploring your personal subtlety with that, and
Yeah.
it's not always going to scream out at you the yes or no, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much to respond to right now in the world. I feel like that
Exactly.
being able to sit with the quietude and really listen to what that feels like. That's a very cool thing to do on your birthday.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. What about when you were a kid? Did you grow up celebrating your birthday and feeling a resonance with this time of year, getting excited about it, or?
Well, this is going to kind of exemplify my desire motivation a little bit, but I'm remembering maybe I was about 4 or 5, but I really wanted to have my birthday at Wendy's. I have no idea why, but it was such a dream, and it wasn't a dream actually. It was really forceful, like it came with such a force, and I remember essentially orchestrating my parents so that they would celebrate my birthday at Wendy's.
Nice.
So I don't know what that said about me as a child, but yeah, that's what came to mind.
Nice. That sounds fun. And maybe it was the little girl logo. I always liked Wendy's as a kid because of the logo of just Wendy
Right.
being like, oh, she seems friendly.
Yes, she
Something.
does.
Yeah, she's got a warmth about her for a fast food
Yes.
chain, right? Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Jakarta in Indonesia.
Okay.
Hmm.
Wow. Is there
Yeah.
Wendy's in Jakarta?
Yeah. When I
Yeah.
was growing up,
Yeah.
there was Wendy's, we had McDonald's. Yeah, we had quite a few chain, and it's interesting you asked this question, Allison, because I think the 90s was really the first decade where a lot of these franchises, or I guess like multinational companies come to Indonesia. Like prior to that, it was mostly like local businesses. And yeah, I grew up in the helm of that change as well. Astrologically, that was the kind of Neptune Uranus conjunction in Capricorn period, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I haven't studied it too deeply in the context of Indonesia, but there was definitely that change of the country being more open to foreign influences during the 90s.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And so as a child growing up in Jakarta, were you always tapped into these kind of more creative and cosmic spiritual pursuits or interests? Or I'm curious how you found your way to doing the work that you do now.
Yeah. Again, such a great question. I was always really tuned in as a child, and Indonesia up until now is a pretty animist society. Like we don't call it animism, but the culture itself makes a lot of space for non-human and more than human beings to influence the human affairs, right? So it's really interesting because I feel like even whenever I go back home, that line or that distinction that seems so reinforced in the US between the human world and the non-human world is really not so pronounced back there. Like it almost seems like everyone's just kind of in this soup together, you know? Um, I happen to grow up Christian, which is kind of a rabbit hole in and of itself because Christianity has a pretty different connotation in Southeast Asia compared to here in the US. Um, but that being said, my family is ethnically Chinese for the most part, and we still held a lot of these customs despite I remember it wasn't until like 1997 or 1998, about 7 to 8 years since I was born, that we were even allowed to celebrate Lunar New Year. Um, because prior to that, it was just not allowed and by the government. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. Oh, your question was about whether I was tapped in. Yeah, I would say so. I would say
Yeah.
like I kind of came into this environment that was already pretty tapped in
Yeah.
from the beginning, and then I was always really drawn to kind of the mystical, mm, unseen realm explorations. Um, I like to joke that, you asked me about how I got into this line of work. Um, there were two things. I like to joke that the first astrology course I ever took was watching all the episodes of Sailor Moon. Like I remember
Yes.
my mom my mom used to make me take a nap as a child in the middle of the day, and that was often when Sailor Moon was also playing, and I would kind of beg her to let me watch Sailor Moon
Oh,
because
nice.
I just loved it so much. Um,
That's a great intro
and
to astrology. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
know, right? And it's like, yeah, that's the person who wrote Sailor Moon, she was really into astrology as well.
I didn't
She
know
was a
that.
Pisces sun. Yeah, she was a
Okay.
Pisces sun. She was really into fashion and she was really into astrology. So if you watch Sailor Moon, you'll see that the costume designs for the characters actually mirror some of um, the clothes that were in a lot of like fashion runways at the
Oh,
time. That
wow.
was
Yeah,
really
they're
fascinating.
amazing. Wow. Who's your
Yeah.
favorite character in Sailor Moon?
Ooh, great question. I think as an adult, I just recently rewatched it, maybe last year. I really had a soft spot for Sailor Mercury, but I think
Mm.
growing up, I always identified, or um, I would say like I found Sailor Mars really aspirational. Like there's
Mm.
something about this. Uh, Sailor Mars was a temple girl and she was kind of a martial artist and she was not afraid to call bullshit,
Yeah.
basically. And I
Yeah.
really like that about her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sailor Mars was my favorite too. I love
Yeah.
Sailor Neptune as well. Yeah, I need
Yes.
to rewatch. It's been such a long time, but
It's
yeah,
such
thank
a
you
great
for
show.
bringing that back up. Yeah, it's
It's
so
such
good.
a great show. I love that show. And I would say the second piece that I wanted to bring in was music, actually. So, when I started doing energy work about a year into it, I realized, oh, because there was when I started learning energy work more officially or formally um with my teacher, Deborah Kremens, I noticed like wow, this is so easeful for me. Like there's something about energy work and um kind of the cultivation of sense perception and ability to feel into or see information that isn't necessarily tangible, like that we
Hmm.
can't always hold with our hands or understand through the kind of more normative lens of understanding reality. Um, there was something about it that was so resonant and so like second nature to me. And I realized playing the piano was my first energy work course, essentially, because essentially when you're playing music, right? Whether that's composing or singing or playing an instrument, you're really translating frequency into form,
Yes.
right? And so, when you're doing an energy work on someone, or when you're doing an energy reading for someone and you're verbalizing using your words, the feelings and the vibes and the images that you receive, that's really not so different than playing music. It's about translation, right, through the vessel of your body and your consciousness. So yeah, I would say like those two things were kind of like what really started me on this path. And then of course, like any other quote unquote normal teenager who had to go to school and like, survive the school system and then had to go to college and all that, like I kind of put that aside, right,
Hmm.
for more traditional, conventional pursuits. And in my 20s, I got back into astrology because I had a bunch of friends who were really into astrology, and we were, using astrology for contextualizing our dating experience, right? Because we
Yeah.
were not understanding, like, why did this person not text me back? So it's like, oh, of course, it's because they're a Scorpio. So,
Yes.
so we used astrology in that way, but I really came into like a devoted um, relationship with astrology, with human design, with energy work, with divination tools as a spiritual practice and a spiritual path towards the end of my Saturn return. So I had released my music album, and I had projected a lot of hopes and dreams into this album. And as is usually the case after a major, what I'm now calling creative exorcism, right? After you birth something creative that took a long time and is pretty major, I burned out and I got really disillusioned and I was questioning everything about my life. I just basically plunged into this existential dark night of the soul. And I remembered at that time that I had always wanted to try meditating, but I had never found like a form of meditation that really worked for me. So then this is interesting, Alison. The reason why I'm bringing this is kind of a long-winded story, but I think this is relevant because there's a Piscean story here. An artist that I was listening to a lot at that time was this singer named Licky Lee, who's a Pisces. And she talked a lot about transcendental meditation, which she got into because she was friends with David Lynch, the filmmaker. And so I started getting into transcendental meditation and I instantly loved it. Like there was something about the practice itself that was really resonant for me. And then a few months into doing that, I found the artist's way and I started doing the morning pages. And within 2 or 3 weeks, I started having really vivid dreams where my grandmother came to me and told me to get a reading with an astrologer. And I was like, that's random. Like, what? Okay, I mean, first of all, I didn't even know that you could go to someone and pay someone who will professionally read your chart at that time. Because
Okay.
I was so I just thought that astrology was something we use for talking about our bad dates, right? So I
Yeah.
was like, okay. And then I went on Google and I just Googled a bunch of astrologers and I'm a Virgo rising, so this makes a lot of sense. I created these spreadsheets of these are the different astrologers, this is their website, this is what I perceive about them, like pros and cons.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Great.
And I stumbled on our mutual friend's Britton LaRue's website on Google. It's so weird. Like I think I was Googling like astrologer who studied with um Deborah Silverman or something like that because I had
Uh-huh.
heard Deborah Silverman on YouTube or a podcast. And she came up and she was kind of like page 5 of Google. So this is I've been researching and I'm deep into my search. And I instantly, the moment I saw Britton's face, I instantly felt like this is it.
Nice.
Going back to the sacral response, it was just like, oh yes. And I was like, fascinating. And I hadn't even really read the words. And I started reading and I resonated with a lot of her story and her perspectives. And I went on Instagram and found out that we were born on the same day. We were both born on March 4th. And which was also my grandmother's birthday.
Oh, no way. Wow.
Yeah, so that's
Wow.
pretty wild. And then I started working with Britain. I started learning from Britain. And then I think maybe about like 2 months into studying astrology with her, we found out that Julia Cameron, the author of The Artist's Way, was also born on March 1st, March 4th. So how's that,
Wow.
Allison, for a
That,
magic story?
yeah, it is. I know, kind of coming from that Virgoan, spreadsheet
Yeah.
analysis to then just getting the hit of like, and they work in tandem, right? You have to
Yeah.
put it all out there and gather, and then it's like, oh, that's the one. But wow,
Yeah.
that is such a beautiful meeting story for you
Yeah.
two, and
It's
all
pretty
of those
wild.
synchronicities. Your grandmother, and Julia Cameron as well. I mean, I know a lot of March 4th people. It's funny. I'm a September 8th, and
Mhm.
so I've always been best friends or lovers or just had some Pisces in my life who is kind of around this middle part of Pisces, and it's just fascinating how that keeps coming through for me
Yeah.
as like this balancing effect. And so it's really cool when you can find someone to go deep into the work with who has a similar experience, and that really highlights how sometimes sun sign astrology or just looking at the sun gate or the sun area can be kind of brushed off as, too universalizing or not having enough truth. But, they say in human design that the sun gate is like 70% of the neutrino information. And I do feel that the sun is obviously a very important part of our experience. And so finding people who have that similar solar energy and solar reflection or way that they sunshine seems like, yeah, just a really nice way to connect. So very
I
cool.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I recently met someone with my same sun gate and cross, incarnation cross, who I had never had met anyone with that. And so I was really excited to see it's actually Cody Smiley
I
who,
love Cody. Yeah.
yeah, and we're doing kind of similar work in the sense of kind of analytically breaking down all of the pieces, but then putting it back together. You know, it feels
Yes.
so resonant to find someone who you're like, wow, that makes a lot of sense that
Hmm.
we are experiencing the world in a similar way. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And I mean, I love hearing your stories of growing up with, yeah, just animism around and the
Mm.
difference between maybe America and Indonesia or different parts of
Yeah.
the world where it's not as delineated. I spent some time in Bali in when I
Mm.
was a teenager and definitely felt that there. And I know there's different history and religion in Bali versus other parts of Indonesia, but
Yeah.
seeing and just the way that spirits were everywhere and
Yeah.
music, you know, the gamelan was carrying that spiritual energy through the air and smelling the smells of the incense and seeing offerings all around. And as an
Absolutely.
18, 17 or 18-year old when I was there, it was such a profound impact on my world to recognize that this is not something that is in a church or in a codified place, but it's everywhere. And
Yeah.
so I see that. I think that we're lacking that a lot in our Western culture,
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful way to start to experience that spirit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Bali is
yeah,
such an interesting nexus of like really intense energy. I feel like each
yeah,
time I go to Bali, even just for a vacation, it always kind of, yeah, tip the balance over in some shape or form. It's very
yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, there's so much depth there in that island. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So when you were growing up with, you know, your birthday at Wendy's and experiencing Sailor Moon and all of this stuff, what was the seasonality? Does the weather change much, or do you? I'm curious, I guess, kind of to zoom out, just what the you know, season of here in the northern hemisphere. It's, you know, like late spring or late winter, early spring, kind of 1 foot in winter, 1 foot in spring, and I'm sure in New York it feels that way a little bit. But I'm curious how like the season of your birthday and the actual physical, you know, earthly awareness showed up for you. How do you feel during this time of year?
Wow. Yeah. I had never thought about this question, but Indonesia is a tropical country. So basically, the temperature is stable for the most part year round. We really only have drought season and rainy season,
Hmm.
right? And kind of a lot of kind of liminal seasons in between. And also, even in the past few years, the delineation between drought and rainy season, that has been pretty mutable. Like every
Hmm.
year, um, it seems to shift ever so slightly. Um, so I would say my birthday was always kind of towards the end of that rainy season. And um, yeah, as I'm feeling into it now, like there's kind of like a, when I was growing up at least, like a wet quality to it, which
Hmm.
also feels very Piscean. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's usually a time of the year where it feels really humid and um, it's also right after the the kind of frenzy of the new year has ended, right? And
Hmm.
we're like solidly in the year. I'm also remembering now as a child, that was like when we're about to end the school year,
Hmm.
so there's kind of a um, on the one hand, like the intensity of like the family holidays has dissipated, but it's also like gearing up to another kind of intensity, which is the end of the school year.
Hmm.
I should also mention Indonesia is really interesting because it recognizes five different religions. And so we're always kind of having all these different holidays, celebrating these different religious holidays of different people
Mm.
who live in Indonesia. And so there is I think growing up in Indonesia helps me tune into the multidimensional reality in a much more embodied way, Allison. Like
Wow.
here in the US, like a lot of the holidays that are celebrated, if it's religious at all, would be the Christian holidays, right?
Yeah.
Which then kind of has this really narrow perspective. But in Indonesia, it's like kind of this diverse hodgepodge of like different holidays. And
Mm.
I'm reminded too that sometimes, like right now, for example, right, is I believe Ramadan,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not
I believe
mistaken. Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's that's just kind of interesting to feel
That
into how
is.
different calendars are happening at the same time.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I always think of Pisces as yeah, you contain multitudes, and we
Yeah,
are, yeah, the boundarylessness, kind of the culmination of every other part of the zodiac, and just this melting pot in a real way, not in the kind of American defined melting pot way that doesn't seem very real, but
that's
yeah,
right.
just really bringing things together and experiencing perspectives in those different ways. So that's
Mhm.
so fascinating.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about, in New York or in the Northern Hemisphere this time of year?
Mm.
How do you feel in your body when we're in this kind of last bit of winter into spring?
Yeah, there's a lot of unpredictability in this time of the year. There's a lot of fluctuation. I was even feeling into how last night I was woken up a couple times during the night and I had to shed like the layers of comforter I was wearing, right? Because the temperature jump between nighttime and morning can
Mm-hmm.
be quite drastic, you know? There's also this push and pull, I think during this time of the year in the eastern part of the so-called United States, where I feel, and this is definitely impacted by the season and the weather, I feel this kind of desire to be more active sometimes, but the body also kind of drawing inward. Um, And what's been really helpful for me is feeling into the medicine of routine during this time of the year. Um, there's kind of a balancing that needs to happen between grounding oneself and surrendering to this kind of ebb and flow, right?
Mm.
Of the season, of the temperature, of even like how windy it is outside. Like, is it going to rain? Is it going to snow? There's so much unpredictability to it. What's the word that people like to say? Like March comes in roaring like a lion and
Out
comes
like a lamb.
out like a
Yeah.
lamb. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's such a great summary to like the seasonal energetics in this um part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah, I think that, the physicality or the staying in your body this time of year and kind of being in a routine feels like a good way to really handle those changes, because it is one of the most, I mean, this transition from winter to spring is really, all the seasonal changes are pretty major, but this one feels really, that contrast between inward and wanting to be outward, but then going out and saying, no, never mind, I'm not quite ready. And, it's like the seed breaking open, germinating and breaking open and poking out,
Yeah.
and then being like, but it's snowing still, like what's
Yes.
going on? Like you never know how it's gonna be. And I think that, yeah, really starting to feel how that feels in my body lately. Just looking at these metaphors of the different, archetypical systems and just the ecology of what's happening can feel really nice to tap into and say, yeah, that's okay. It's okay to
Mm.
feel, that you want to be inward and outward at the same time, and a little bit of
Yes.
the tension that's there too, yeah, in the whooshing five element cycle in Taoism, we're in the season of wood.
Mm.
Spring is the season of wood, and it's all about kind of this upward growth. And so we're in the kind of beginning of that season of going from water into wood, which is coming out of this this receptive season into a, moving upward like a tree growing upward kind of vibe. So it kind of
Yeah,
parallels what you were saying there.
absolutely.
Yeah. And then
Absolutely.
the medicine wheel, there's lots of different medicine wheels and different systems and associations there depending on the region. But the one that I've studied categorizes spring and as the eastern direction, and also the kind of element of physicality, where we're
Mm,
coming out of spirituality in the north, and elderhood, and moving into childhood and physicality. And
yes.
so that also feels, just, yeah, with just simply looking at the weather or the feelings of this change, they seem very aligned with that kind of transition. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I agree. I agree. As you're speaking, I'm thinking about this transition too between sleeping and waking,
Yeah.
right? Like, um, I think so much of our relationship personally to this time of the year, um, at least for me, is really reflected in my own relationship with that time of the day when I just woke up and I'm kind of groggily trying to start my day, right? For some people, like my partner is one of these people who just like gets out of bed, gets out of bed and just like starts doing things. Like he's able to just kind of be like whoop, right? And I'm not one of those people. Ideally would want like a 5 hour morning ritual. That's probably
Me
ideal
too.
for me.
Me too. Yes. I thought I'd grow out of that one day, but it turns out it's not an age thing. It's just like a me thing. Yeah.
No, I think
Yeah.
yeah, for me it's definitely a me thing. And if anything, I feel like as I get older, it gets more drawn out. Like sometimes I have to snap myself out of it, because it's like, okay, it's enough. You can
Yeah.
do this all day.
Yeah.
Um, but that being said, for me, I know that I need a little bit of like gentleness, a little bit of patience, and like remembering to collaborate with my body and with my environment itself, right? Because how quickly I can get up in the morning is reliant on external factors too. Like it's reliant on the temperature, it's reliant on the amount of light we have in that day that is pouring through into my apartment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this reminded me of something that I heard Caroline May said the other day when I was listening to one of her audiobooks, where she talked about the morning ritual or like how we start our day as being this um, first chakra attunement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this is the way that our first chakra or like first energy center that is connected to physical body survival. This is how we attune and ground that part of our lived experience, and um, a little story I'll tell here, Allison, is I recently finally kind of got over my weirdness about traveling. Like I used to be so like cagey and weird about traveling, and I recently realized that part of what was so difficult about traveling for me was not having some of these routines. And so I've learned that giving myself space and opportunity to actually establish those routines, even if they're just micro routines that I had to get into the first 3 or 4 days when I'm in a new place, really is such a great investment of time and energy because it then really sets me up to feel a certain kind of baseline security, right? To being able um, to operate. And when we think about our kind of spiritual connection to this time of the year too, um, we're really approaching spring equinox, right? And so I think there's something here about really taking the time to set the stage so that we can start right.
I love that.
It's like that idea of like breakfast being the most important meal of the day, right? Um, yeah, I think there's a lot that we can tune into in Pisces season to set us up for kind of the burst of energy that often comes with Aries season.
Yes, that is beautiful. I love that waking in or sleeping into waking is the metaphor for this season of, it's a little bit longer, but it is true that how you wake up and what you do when you first wake up matters so much. And because you're in that liminal state space that is so tapped into spirit and dream and this realm that's not as tactile and tangible, right? And so when if you don't give that, for me, I often wake up in the, just having finished a very intense dream and to just pop out of bed and go be interacting with like coffee cups and like the sink, after being in like another dimension. I'm like, I can't, it doesn't compute. So for me, laying there and really just allowing myself to be awake, but kind of processing what just happened in that other realm is so important. And I used to not give myself that because I wanted to, keep up with the productivity standard of the work world and all of that. And I think that now that I have started to give myself that as well, it is, just that recap or that stabilizing to connect one world to another feels like,
Absolutely.
yeah, we could all be doing a little bit of that this season for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah.
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 And, here we are in March, this Aries or Pisces into Aries season being very emphasizing Pisces and Aries with all of the different transits happening with the North Node in Pisces and South Node in Virgo and this eclipse coming up in Virgo on the 13th and Neptune moving into Aries from Pisces at the end of the month after how many, 14 years in Pisces. There's a lot
Forever.
happening on this cusp, right? And in this zone
Totally.
that's this interstitial zone in between. And
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, so it's definitely, I think, extra important to give the Pisces Aries cusp area the kind of the reverence that it deserves for ending one cycle and entering a new one. It's powerful
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely.
I am curious. I mean, you have a Virgo rising, and I'm curious if you'd be interested in chatting a little bit about the Virgo Pisces axis, knowing
Sure.
that we do have this collective lunar nodes in on that axis right now, and
Hmm.
and with that Virgo eclipse coming up, it's going to be right on my Mercury. So I'm like a little anticipatory. What's this going to be?
Yeah.
But yeah, just I'm curious how you feel about your Pisces sun sign itself and Virgo rising and how those interact with each other, or
Mhm.
just anything that you have to say about that axis.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's the axis of frequency and form, right? It's the axis of spirit and matter. Um, and it's also the axis between, when I think about Virgo and Pisces, I always think about the right and the left hemisphere of the brain.
Hmm.
Um, and to me, Virgo energy, gets, especially in kind of more popular astrology or kind of like meme astrology, gets the reputation of being really like fastidious and really kind of exact. And I think that can be true, but ultimately, what I sense is Virgo Virgo energy requires kind of an internal logic. Whereas Pisces energy requires this kind of embracing, right? And we can even think about this from their traditional ruler, right? Virgo is ruled by Mercury, and it's also the place where Mercury is at home and exalts. And then Pisces is the home of Jupiter, and it's where Venus exalts. So if you think about this, right, like on the one hand, the Virgo landscape is like that really mercurial landscape, very curious. Likes to work with a lot of pieces of data in order to kind of piece together maybe a larger picture, or even something that I'm always tuning into with Virgo is Virgo likes to learn a lot of different tools to know which tool is best for what.
Hmm.
Like
Yep.
there's a quality that is very driven by utility, right? So Virgo to me is not organization for aesthetic's sake. That may be more of a Libra thing. For
Hmm.
example, Marie Kondo is a Libra sun. That's such a great example of like Virgo isn't necessarily so obsessed about tidying, I think, but Virgo wants internal logic, which is
Mm,
different than tidying, right?
right.
And
Yeah.
and yeah, um, and I think Pisces is can is this energy that's very imaginative, very embracing, and um, recognizing that separation on some level is an illusion, right? So because we are spirits inhabiting matter or inhabiting bodies, I think the constant push and pull between the two are really important. You know,
Yeah.
it's like Virgo is uh, taking a shower every day, right? Like cleaning every day, digesting and reducing or releasing waste on a daily level. And Pisces is kind of the rest that we need in our sleeping life, right? So
Mm,
there's a quality to Virgo and Pisces that I think is is always ongoing. Like it's
hmm.
not um it's part of this larger flow of life. And even when we think about the human life itself, it's just like a slice within that larger flow, right?
Right.
And Pisces Virgo, I think, is always kind of in negotiation of the two. Um, does that answer your question, Allison?
I
Or
love that. I love hearing
yeah.
these, yeah, these reflections because yeah, again, just feel very Virgo in it. I have Sun and Mercury there, but then my Earth is in Pisces, and I do have the 63-4 channel activated, and
Mm.
so I do feel tapped into Pisces in my body graph and in my chart in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
I'm always just very curious about this axis, the sixth, 12th house axis, and
Mhm.
thinking about, how different those can feel, the
Yeah.
sixth house being daily routines and kind of small animals and pets and, what we're, our work in the world and that kind of thing. And then Pisces being very, yeah, that the dissolution that you were talking about earlier, this kind of reaching a point that's, maybe after life, after death and before birth, and this kind of
Mhm.
primordial, etheric kind of soup that is both of them. I think for me, it's taken a while to understand how integrated they are because they can
Yeah.
seem so polar opposite,
Yeah.
and some other axes seem a little bit more unified in some ways, perhaps. But this one has been like, wow, how those seem so different. But when
Mm.
you think of it as that axis of, I consider it the axis of service,
Mhm.
where and spirit, where there's different ways to be to tap into spirit and to be of service. And one is by dissolving boundaries, and one is really understanding how to create boundaries and to
Yeah.
harvest from those boundaries what is ripe, what is rotten. It's
Yeah.
important for life and for survival. And then at the other
Absolutely.
side of it, it's recognizing that we can't divide everything up. We have to put it back together. And it's this, I love it. It feels like a figure eight, kind of a beautiful cycle of energy between the two. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Absolutely.
really, really cool. Do you have any thoughts on this upcoming Virgo eclipse
Mm.
in South Node Virgo lunar eclipse on the 13th?
Yeah.
This episode will be
Yeah.
coming out the week of the eclipse, so I'm sure some listeners might be curious about what that feels like collectively.
Yeah. I'm curious too. Um, I would say this particular lunar eclipse, right? It's the moon is opposite Saturn, which I don't know if you felt this too, Allison, but to me, this particular Pisces season has felt very Saturnian. And one way that I've been contextualizing that is, Saturn, if I'm recalling correctly, Saturn entered Pisces during Pisces season, right, in 2023.
I believe
And
so.
yeah, and I think
Yeah.
this is the last Pisces season where Saturn will be in Pisces. And
Hmm.
so there's kind of an amplification of that Saturnian quality. Um, and the moon is also going to be trining Uranus. And a day after the lunar eclipse, we have Mercury, which is the ruler of that Virgo moon, right? Stationing retrograde in Aries.
Yeah.
And it's in 9-degree Aries, which is very close to where the partial solar eclipse will happen at the end of the month.
Right.
Um,
On the
it's
29th. Yeah.
on the
Mm-hmm.
29th, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also within a degree or so away from where Venus went retrograde, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this 9-degree Aries, 10-degree Aries zone is like really hot. Um, it feels very intense to me,
Yeah.
to not kind of energetically, it feels very intense. And the overall vibe that I was feeling into was I got this image of like this large ship floating on the ocean, but not in like a restful way. It's kind of like this like, where are we going? Are we even moving kind of energy?
Mm-hmm.
Um, One way that I've been contextualizing this as well is, as with all eclipses, eclipses really invite us into deeper surrender between this internal pull and this external pull, right?
Yeah.
And when I was reflecting on in the end of February about March, I was feeling like this is a month where some of the things that we didn't expect will ever happen will just kind of magically or spontaneously happen. And the things that we've been wanting to and efforting to happen for a long time is just kind of coming to a standstill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that it will never be accomplished, but I think there is kind of this um another imagery that's coming to mind is an hourglass that's like paused in time.
Yeah.
Where the sand is not moving. That's kind of how
Uh,
it feels like to me.
mm,
And inherently, there's nothing really wrong with kind of that standstill moment.
mm-hmm.
Um, but I think especially given the culture we live in, given the reality that we are humans who have been conditioned mentally to think that progress means that we are on the path to something good, it can be really challenging to that
Yeah.
part of us. Yeah.
Mm,
What are
yeah.
you picking up on, Allison, in terms of
Well,
this
yeah.
eclipse?
I mean, all of that, the trine to Uranus and yeah, that 9 degree of Aries, the kind of, yeah, it's such a focal point in that first decan of Aries being just this initiatory energy, but then kind of taking that initiation and going backwards, like both Mercury and Venus going back into Pisces and saying kind of that similar, like, I'm not ready to wake up yet. I'm not ready to start the new reality. So we're all throughout all of March, I feel like we're in that kind of liminal space between sleep and wakefulness and kind of
For
wanting
sure.
to go back to sleep because it feels more comfortable, more cozy. It's like a really warm bed that's like, wait a second, there's a very big new beginning energy happening both astrologically over the next few years and then in human design. I mean, just it's all the same wheel, right? But there's big markers over the next couple of years, 2026, 2027, about new beginnings, like a
Yeah.
dawning of a new era kind of thing, like
Yeah.
major transformation. And so being in this March 2025 zone where we're getting a lot of that back and forth frequency between Aries and Pisces, and then having Virgo across the wheel from that being this, like, the tail of the dragon, the release point, the things that we need to let go of and excrete essentially and just like
Mm.
get out of our system so that we can move into that new reality of these outer planets being in Aries and of that shift from gate 37 to gate 55 in the outer, human design frequency. The big prophecy of 2027 is about that shift, and it's a shift from more material agreements to more of a spiritual understanding,
Mm.
I feel like.
Mm.
But there's a lot of energy with that happening. So it's not the kind of spirituality that's like, let's just float on our backs and just kind of like relax into it. It's more like, oh no, sometimes spirit comes like a lion. It comes with a lot of force and an
Absolutely.
awakening that is shocking, right?
Absolutely.
And yeah, the eclipse is happening on the axis of in human design. It's gate 36-6, so
Mm.
that those programming partners, and those are the gates. The moon is in the gate of friction in Virgo,
Mm.
and the sun will be in the gate of crisis in
Mm.
Pisces. And so
Right.
those words sound a little intimidating. If you we don't really love the idea of friction. We don't love the idea of of crisis. They both do have beautiful, beautiful gifts as far as, being able to surrender and also being able to work with challenges to come to a much, it's kind of like the coal becoming the diamond. It's like you have to go through some friction. And so I feel like, I really don't like fear-mongering kind of astrology. I don't like it when there's, like hold on to your seats and just embrace, because you're right, eclipses are all about surrender, and they're all about really, like, for me, eclipses I see as like the sun is consciousness and the moon is emotionality. And with a lunar eclipse, the earth is what's coming between. It's what's shadowing the sun's light and also putting a shadow onto the moon. So it's almost saying, don't listen too much to your conscious will. Don't try to manifest or create conscious, a conscious impact on the world. But also don't get too lost in your emotions either. Sometimes full moons are like, lean into your emotions. Let them teach you. But for me, a lunar eclipse is a time when it's like, no, listen to the earth. Like ground. The earth is making itself known by putting a shadow onto the moon and blocking light. So it's like lay on the earth, walk with your bare feet on the ground, and really like pay attention and give respect to this planet that we call home, and how she can hold us in these times of uncertainty. So that's my little eclipse spiel. Yeah.
I love that. That's very rich, and you're helping me contextualize something I've been feeling into as well, which is tuning in to parts of our physical bodies that we've kind of relegated to the side, or we've kind of forgotten, or we just have maybe never really paid a lot of attention to, as being a really important theme, I think, for this specific lunar eclipse as well. And, again, thinking about that Virgo Pisces axis, right? Like, what does it mean from the Virgo Pisces lens that there are certain parts of our bodies that we exile? Or that we forgot, that we don't put as much attention to. For example, in my case, I know that, my face is a part of my body that I'm always tinkering with, right? I'm always like, here's some really beautiful, nourishing, moisturizing oil. Like if you are, you know, if there's a dry patch here, let's work on it, right? But then do I put the same amount of um attention or energy into like maybe like the back part of my arm, or do I put the same amount of energy into the soles of my feet, right? Virgo also, or Pisces also rules the feet.
Right.
And it's also making me think about circulation, for example. It's really easy to kind of forget that our circulatory system is literally like one of the things that kept us alive, right?
Yeah.
And we may have gotten really comfortable with like one posture in our daily life that makes us forget to move, right? And to kind of redistribute some of the weight and the attention. And the reason why I'm saying this is because what you were sharing earlier about connecting with the earth is making me think about how our primary home is really our bodies,
Yeah.
right? And the body is also an extension of the earth. The body is an extension
Yes.
of the land. And bringing attention is also very much like a Pisces Virgo thing, because I think the idea of healing has been commodified, it's been diluted and confused, but ultimately, healing is really about bringing attention so that the natural process of healing that is a byproduct of being alive can happen,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yes.
it. That's it. It's really
That is
nothing
it.
fancy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I love when people bring up that the earth is the body and the body is the earth, because that's very much how I see it. And I think
Yeah.
that that's like common knowledge. It feels like everybody knows that, right? But sometimes that can still feel a little radical. Like, is it? Are we different than that? Or what are we made of? But for me,
Yeah.
it's very much important to, like astrology to me feels like the only reason astrology and the study of the stars works is because we are from a certain perspective on Earth. Like
Hmm.
astrology on, if we were on Mars or Neptune or somewhere else, it would be a very different system. And so it is based on
Totally.
our perspective, our vantage point. And so
Yeah.
that is our the Earth itself, and then it's our bodies at a particular place on Earth, and
Yeah.
the connection between the two feel very important when it comes to an eclipse, a lunar eclipse especially, to be in your body, breathe, just get a little bit out of your conscious mind or even your heart, your emotional flow, and recognize that those are things that might have a little bit more of an upset to, but that you are still here. You are still a body. You are still connected to the place that you were born out of. And,
Yes.
I have a quote on my website by Alan Watts that says, "You didn't come into this world, you came out of it like a wave from the ocean. You are not
Mm.
a stranger here." And I always just really liked that because it's like this, yeah, the idea that we're kind of, as humans and as any kind of being, just rising out of this earth, rising out of this place, like
Yeah.
a wave, and then coming back to it at the end, and being a part of
That's
that
beautiful.
collective. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank
Hmm.
you for sharing all of these juicy insights into this upcoming week,
Thank
and
you.
month ahead. Yeah. I think, I don't want to keep you for too long. I'm having such a lovely time in this conversation, but
Me
I'd
too.
love to, I'd love to talk a little bit just to wrap up about the I Ching Gene Keys Human Design Wheel
Mhm.
and Gate 63 for you. Again, I'm the opposite gate at Gate 64, and
Mhm.
I think it's interesting you brought up in talking about the Pisces Virgo axis, how it's that left right brain hemisphere. And, in human design, gate 63 is actually a left brain
Mm.
gate, and gate 64 is a right brain gate. And it's almost
Yeah.
because 64 is imagination and
Mm.
63 is doubt and inquiry. And so they seem almost reversed, like it should be that 64 is in Pisces and 63
Totally.
is in Virgo, kind of like I'm doubting this and getting the answer to it. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of an interesting, yeah, kind of conundrum or juxtaposition between them. And so I'd be curious to hear like what your thoughts and feelings are about being a 63 sun, the gate of doubt, inquiry, truth, how that
Yeah.
shows up for you.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think the first thing I think about when I think about Gate 63 is like what is even the nature of doubt, right? Like where does doubt come from? Like what happens, which is a very on a meta level, very Gate 63 to even ask that question, right? Like where does doubt
Totally.
come from? And something that I've been feeling into, and I know there's in some shape or form, Ra also talks about this, how doubt is really a byproduct of the misalignment of what we are seeing or perceiving with logic, right? And logic really being the left hemisphere of the brain's attempt to kind of organize life into a pattern that it has seen before.
Hmm.
So to me, logic is tied to a sense of precedent. Like I'm always feeling into how like logic is logic is conditioned in a way, right? Like logic occurs because there's some sort of thing that we've seen before that now we see and we can think that it makes sense, right? Even just the
Hmm.
idea of like something making sense means that we are able to draw a correlation between what we're seeing and what we've seen before, like what's
Hmm.
in front of us versus what we've seen in the past. And what I think is interesting about Gate 63 is the channel, right? It's paired with Gate 4.
Hmm.
And Gate 4 is associated with the sign of Leo. And I think one of the key words for Gate 4 is youthful folly.
Yeah.
Um, and it's this idea of like how answers are often just sheer foolishness. And I think Ra's exact phrase was, "A formula is the beginning of a logical awareness. It is worthy of remembering that an answer is not necessarily a solution or a fact."
Hmm.
And this idea
Mm-hmm.
of like the answer not necessarily being the solution or the fact is something that I've really grappled with in my own lived experience. For example, when I first got into astrology, right? And then into energy work, and then later into human design, what I found is these are all kind of logical systems, right, that have been concocted by the human mind for the human mind,
Yeah.
essentially. Because ultimately, all that language is, or all that a system is a finger pointing to the moon of a larger energetic experience that really can't be pinned down by the words, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, the language or the system is a bridge between our perception and um, and our understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is the thing that we perceive and then how we understand it or how we make it useful within our three-dimensional reality, right? And
Right.
so um, I think being a person born with the sun on gate 63, this is kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, Allison.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed this arc in my journey where it often starts with a question or like kind of a self-doubt. Um, like I even started studying astrology seriously because of an existential dark night of the soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like wondering like why am I even here? Like I, you know, tapped into these larger creative visions. I made it happen. Why didn't my life suddenly just, turn into a magical carriage, right? Like, what's going on here? Am I
Uh-huh.
not just supposed to be a divine channeler and translator of information? Wow, I just channeled this thing and like I didn't get my needs met, so like
Uh-huh.
what is that about, right? Um, and also like on a more kind of specific level, when I was studying astrology, I was plagued with questions. I was one of those people who were just like, but why this? Why that? Like, what? This doesn't make sense. And then um, having to kind of power through that, right? And also letting myself take in all this information and later discovering that, oh, actually, the reason why I even wanted to learn the system is because the system helps me train my inner eye.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I learned the system and once I train my inner eye, I can now just trust my inner eye. So what I've found time and time again in learning these different systems, right? The astrology is a system. Energy work, as I learned it, was really a system that is kind of, taking in all these different traditions and putting together a system of like how to look for energy or where to look. And then human design is also a system, right? An
Yeah.
energetic map. Um, what I've experienced time and time again is that doubt brought me into an intense process of learning, but it's never really about the thing itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I ultimately at the end of the day have very little desire to kind of be a subject matter expert, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. I'm interested in um, affirming my own lens on reality and helping other people affirm their lens of reality, you know? And so it's almost like, when I was in music school in the first kind of part of my life, um, something that we kept learning over and over again was how different composers learned music theory or learned the rules in order to be able to break them. Great works of art is this constant tension between um, working within the rules and then breaking the rules, right? And um, yeah, I think there's that as well in my
Mm-hmm.
yeah when I contextualize like being born under um, the sun being in gate 63. That's what I'm thinking about because it's like in a way that pursuit of truth requires you to question everything you think you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that is the ultimate truth, is to keep that. It's the process of questioning and living in that world, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's so interesting that you came to astrology through an album release that left you feeling kind of that postpartum depression. I know that very well. I'm a visual artist, but similarly, when you release a body of work, it's like you're already so much further evolved or like further moved on from what it ends up being, that how it hits, how it lands out in the world feels like so unsatisfying, because you're already on to the next question, the next inquiry, the next synthesis and integration. And my partner is also a musician, and I've talked to him about that process of releasing albums, especially because it is such a long time building a certain something to say, and then once it lands, it's inevitably going to not feel as good as you want it to feel, because it felt so good in the making of it, and then ending it and being like, oh, I can't change this again, I can't inquire any further. That, I think that in itself, the finality of it can feel that kind of whoomp, like that shoulder drop that you were talking about. And so that's really interesting. I resonate so much with everything that you're saying about 63, and that, the 4 is the youthful folly, or the channel of formalization, and it's that desire to ask a question and then find a solution. And it's almost like if you stop and say, oh, well, this solution that I found is the final answer, then you have that youthful folly. You're a fool, right? Because it's never that. And there's a quote by Richard Rudd from the Gene Keys about this that says, "There's no such thing as scientific truth. There's scientific discovery, scientific insight, but never truth. It's never fixed. Inquiry has to always remain open. The moment the mind becomes fixed in a finite system or structure, we have dogma and opinion. The moment we have those, we have division." And I liked that perception, because, again, that's kind of to me, it feels very obvious that there is no scientific truth, but I think that can also feel very radical to hear that statement for some people. Like, what do you mean? Of course there is. We have checks and balances, and we have, the scientific method in order to get the truth. But being in this gate of doubt that's, leading to inquiry, that's leading to truth, is ultimately, like you said, it's getting to a point of recognizing that the truth is always with us, but the truth is, it's a moving target. It's like a quantum phenomenon where it's not like you're going to find it and then it's just going to be chill and you're going to be on a plateau where you're just sitting there. It's like it's about the movement, and that feels,
it's an experience,
right?
And it's an experience that continues to dissipate, right, with each passing moment.
Yeah, absolutely. In the I Ching, the trigrams that compose 63 are water over fire. And to me, it feels like when there's water over fire, there's going to be like a simmering. If there's going to be movement, it's like a pot of water over a fire. There's going to be, it's going to be changing all the time, right? It's going to evaporate. You add more water. It's still, it starts to simmer, then it starts to boil. And there's definitely there's truth within all of that. The fact that it's never going to be at a constant state. It has to be moving. And when you look at gate 64, the next one that's your earth gate and my sun, it's the opposite of that. It's fire over water. And what's interesting about that for me is that fire over water, fire rises up and water drops down. It's kind of this, and it's called the gate of confusion, because it's like after we've created this boiling, bubbling cauldron of like the truth, right? In gate 63, which is known as after completion, we then reach 64, which is before completion. And it's this almost koan, like Zen koan, or kind of paradoxical thing where you're like, wait a second, wouldn't it be nice if we just got to the truth and set that cauldron a bubbling and got it to just be like, okay, cool, we're at the end. But instead it's really showing that, you go into fire over water, and it's almost like those are reaching in opposite directions, and in order to meet each other, they have to kind of come full circle. circle
Yeah.
all the way around
Yeah.
in order to make sense of it. And so I'm just so fascinated by these two gates, as they're almost like the epilogue of the I Ching, in the
Yeah.
sense that we have all of these gates that one thing leads to another, and then you reach these energies of 63 and 64, and they're like they are that liminal space between sleep and wakefulness almost
Yeah.
too. They are the end of the wheel and the beginning of the new one. And so just really, really interesting
Hmm.
to tap into that. Yeah.
Definitely. How do
Yeah.
you understand the difference between doubt and confusion, Allison? Because the keyword that's associated with 63 is doubt, and then 64 is confusion. And um, yeah, I was reflecting on that, and I was like, I wonder what Allison thinks about this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think in my introductory email to kind of what I wanted to talk about in this, I was saying that it would be really fun to dive into how, doubt leads to truth and confusion
Mm-hmm.
leads to illumination, because in the
Mm-hmm.
gene keys, that is the path of both of those, and they're similar, right? It's like truth and illumination seem to me quite similar. Confusion and doubt seem quite similar in certain ways, but the way I understand it is that, like you mentioned about doubt is seeking to find a pattern, like pattern recognition, to kind of plan for the future in order to find an answer, like
Right.
getting enough data points and insights from experiences to put together, okay, I think this is how this is working, and kind of creating patterns so that then some kind of answer or formalization can be formed from that. So it's more future looking doubt. It's
Mm.
kind of like, especially when we turn it out to the world instead of inward into self doubt, and we doubt something happening, the way the world works, or how astrology works, or what even is doubt, those types of questions. They're thinking
Right.
about, like, well, what they're really asking is, how can I form a pattern that can help me feel comfortable in moving forward in
Mm.
in the wheel. And then I think that confusion is more about, how does my lived experience align with my past? It's really about looking back into our own past and the collective consciousness, into history, and into, just like how we can take where we currently are and apply it back into how we were formed. And I think being a Virgo gate, like you're mentioning, spirit and matter being kind of two sides of the same coin, I think
Mm.
it is trying to look at the material, like my body, and then and my mind and my philosophies, and say, like, how were these made up? Is it consistent? And
Mm.
sometimes that can be really confusing to look
Yeah.
back and into our ancestries and say, wait a second, like that, I don't know if I'm confused by some things that I've done, or like how I got here. I've definitely asked myself that question, like, how did I even
Right.
get here? What
Right.
happened? um, and I think that, both 63 and 64 are head gates. So
Mm.
along with gate 61, which is the Capricorn gate of mystery. And so those are
Mhm.
the three in the body graph that live in the, little triangle in the head. And I think that having both of them there is, and the left and the right hemisphere, as you were mentioning, we are thinkers. To go
Mm.
back to what you said in the beginning of this conversation, it's,
Yeah.
we are spirit, but we also are thinking. And you and I, being 63, 64 people, are in our heads. And for
We
me,
are.
I think what I used to think about was, like, I'm going to put a thought, like, I'm confused, so I'm going to put a thought out into the world to try to get an answer, or to try to
Mm.
calm my confusion. And then it's going to come back down from, I put it
Mm.
out, or it's going to come back in. But one
Yeah.
thing I've been really thinking about lately is kind of the toroidal nature of the world, and like
Mm.
the Earth's magnetosphere that has basically, and all planets have this like magnetic field where energy is coming out of the top and then circulating around and coming back up through the
Yeah.
bottom. And
Yeah.
same thing with like the human energy field and the heartbeat. We have this kind of toroidal shape where it's really helped me to conceptualize thinking and being in my brain and in my mind a lot by saying, if I put something out from my thoughts, if I put a doubt out there, if I question the mystery, or if I have a confused state of mind and I put it out there, it actually has to kind of come back around my body, land on the earth, and then come back up through my feet and into my, sacral and all the way up back through the energy centers to reach my brain again. And that process of embodiment through connecting to, what's above my head, what's down below the ground, and then coming back through, that process is how I can transmute confusion into imagination and illumination, because it is now embodied, and that's where the art is coming from. It's like coming through my hands. I'm painting, I'm making music. It's like it has to come through the body. And when I start to get in that, like, I'm going to doubt something and need a question immediately to come back down into my head, it doesn't work, and it creates massive anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Like crazy amount of just too much overthinking. And so for me, this has been kind of one of the bigger just truths, in the sense that it is moving. I feel for me, like in my body, that it feels like a truth that by keeping the confusion and imagination and doubt both moving, we can then kind of find that truth or that illumination to what we're looking for.
Beautiful.
So.
Yeah. Wow. That gave me so much to reflect on. Something that I was thinking about, Allison, is how we're kind of getting into the deep cuts here, right, with human design. But a lot of people who are born in kind of mid March or early March and early September, we have that 63-64 activation, right? But I've been really fascinated by people born like a little bit later, like the Pisces people born like in the 14th, 15th of March, and how a lot of them don't have that gate activated, right? And depending on their placement, obviously. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Albert Einstein didn't have any gates defined in his head.
No.
And then I think there's this other, the singer I mentioned earlier, Licky Lee, also doesn't have that. And it's such an interesting experience. And I keep wondering, like, oh, what would it be like to not have any of these head gates defined? It must be nice.
Yeah, I feel that too. Sometimes I just want to cut my head off. I'm like, just stop. So it's it can be like a lot of chat, the monkey mind, as they say in yoga, and it's just kind of calm the monkey mind. For me, I'm just like, that's impossible. Like, there's too much going on up there. But it's really about learning how to embrace it. I think with human design, I love that it's not about cutting it off. It's not about, saying shh to that monkey, but being like, okay, monkey, in my mind, like, how can I listen to you? And like, for me, it's like a long game. It's the more I can not have confusion about my own personal path, or not have self-doubt about, am I doing this right? And because that can turn into just this, churning inside. But if you start to apply these gifts of, inquiry and imagination to the outer world, it can be this really beautiful way to walk through space and not want to cut your head off, but to say, oh, I'm helping to continue the wheel turning. I love that you mentioned Licky Lee. I've forgotten about her, but she's one of my favorites too. Around my Saturn return, I was listening to her a lot, and I follow rivers. I just felt so this like
such
flowing
a great album.
through. I know, so good. Oh, beautiful. Well, do you have any other thoughts about 63, 64, or anything else that you want to mention at this point? No pressure at all. Just curious.
I think maybe just a quote, Allison. I was thinking about, this topic, and the quote that kept coming into my mind was the Rilke quote. It says, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer." I think that's such a beautiful encapsulation of this Gate 63 energy. don't you think?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love Rilke. I hadn't heard that one though, and that is so beautiful. It really does encourage us to just, yeah, be in our bodies, be on this earth, walk every day, as with that sense of, the truth is out there, and with a
Yeah.
sense of creativity, and yeah, tapping back to what you said at the beginning, just, yeah, being able to create the creative exorcism in order to create that web that of beauty and of truth that can hold us all. And yeah, I think that we're headed through some, turbulent waters, it feels like, as far as just where we're currently at in our country and in our just place in history. And so to have this at the end of Pisces season here as this culmination of this year of, for me, my first year of doing podcasts, and it feels like, thank
Congratulations.
you. Yeah, it feels like a really beautiful ending point, but also such a beautiful new beginning. And to recognize that, yeah, we can celebrate that, the new year, the astrological new year, but it's just one place along many potential new beginnings. And so beautiful to walk this wheel with you. So nice to have you
Likewise.
here. Yeah.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you. I'm curious if you have any projects you're excited about that you'd like to share about here, or just how people out there listening can find you and work with you.
Yeah, I have a lot of things kind of cooking in the background at the moment. Um, but folks can find me on my podcast, Healing the Spirit. I share pretty regularly. That's really one of the few places that feel super resonant for me to show up regularly, maybe because I'm a musician. And yeah, I'm currently mostly doing a lot of one-on-one work. I'm offering a 2025 astrology reading. It's both of these are like two sessions. And the other one is I also do a human design reading currently. So that's what I offer to the public. And I also, yeah, if anyone's interested in working one-on-one on a deeper capacity, I have kind of coaching and mentorship offers that you can inquire about. Yeah, so that's
Awesome.
primarily where a lot of my attention is going now. And yeah, I'm planning some courses throughout the year, some self-paced offerings. So be on the lookout, join my newsletter, all the things.
Wonderful. Jonathan Koe, KOE.com is your website. And
That's
yeah, I
correct.
highly recommend Healing the Spirit. It's such a wonderful podcast. You've been
Thank
doing
you,
that for a
Allison.
while now, right? How many?
Yeah, I started in 2022, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
February 2022. Hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. It's
Thank you,
been such a
Allison.
pleasure to talk to you. Yeah,
It's been such
yeah.
a pleasure. This has been so great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And that was Jonathan Koe. So lovely to talk to you, Jonathan. And I hope you all enjoyed that conversation. Again, you can find him at jonathankoe.com. He has a really awesome website with just so many gems of wisdom. So I recommend checking that out. And also his podcast, Healing the Spirit, is so beautiful. He puts out a lot of really incredible interviews and personal musings. So definitely check that out. And again, if you enjoyed this podcast, Cycles of Time, give it a follow at Cycles of Time Podcast or Astrosomatics on Instagram or Substack, wherever you are listening to podcasts. It would also be great to get any kind of thumbs up or appreciation there. It's always helpful. And yeah, check out the offerings that Jonathan has and that I have coming up. It's just one of those years where I feel like it's super helpful to join in community and tap into that spirit of inquiry that we were talking about. So have a really lovely end of Pisces season and beginning of Aries season. And I'll see you again next week for the weekly forecast. Have a beautiful day.